Evansdale is a city in Black Hawk County, Iowa, in the United States. The city is just 10 miles southeast of Waterloo, which is the fourth most populous city in Iowa. For years, all seemed to go well for this small town, which boasts a population of about 5,000 people. But since 2012, this relatively quiet area has become synonymous with a violent crime that would come to forever haunt the people living within the town and would leave two families desperately searching for answers. This is the case of the Evansdale Murders. Lirik Raelynne Cook was born on October 2, 2001, in Waterloo, Iowa, to Dan and Misty Morrissey. Lirik also had a brother named Dylan, whom she was very close to. Both of Lirik's parents struggled with drug abuse, and Lirik was mostly raised by her grandmother, Wilma Cook. Lirik attended Kingsley Elementary School in Waterloo. She enjoyed playing outside, bowling, cheerleading, and gymnastics. Lirik was described as a special young lady who was an infectious joy to be around. She had a heart of compassion for her family and her friends. She also enjoyed playing card games with her grandmother in the afternoon. Elizabeth June Marie Collins was born at Allen Memorial Hospital in Waterloo, Iowa on July 3, 2003, to Drew and Heather Collins. Elizabeth grew up with 3 siblings, one brother named Kelly and 2 sisters named Amber and Callie. She loved playing with her siblings and ordering them around. Elizabeth had a bubbly personality and enjoyed dressing up and getting her nails and hair done. She loved singing, riding her bike, and playing softball and hockey. She was a student at Pointer Elementary School in Evansdale. She also had a dog named Gus that she loved, and both had grown inseparable. Lirik's mother, Misty, and Elizabeth's mother, Heather, are sisters, and as cousins, Lirik and Elizabeth often played together, especially since Lirik ended up spending a lot of time with her grandmother. During the summer holidays of 2012, Lirik and Elizabeth were spending a lot of time together at their grandmother, Wilma's house, where they often played cards and rode their bicycles together. On the 13th of July, 2012, Lirik and Elizabeth were on one such bicycle ride around Evansdale. The girls' grandmother saw the girls riding their bike at around 12:15 p.m. near downtown Evansdale. The girls were seen at about 12:23 on Brovin Boulevard in Evansdale, and then spotted between 12:30 and 1 p.m. on Gilbert Drive, which was about 1.5 miles from their grandmother's house. The area was not far from Myers Lake, a popular fishing and recreational area. This was the last time they were seen alive. About 2 hours later, when the girls didn't return to their grandmother's house, the family members began looking around, calling friends and family to figure out if they had seen the girls. When they were nowhere to be found, the family notified the police at 2:48 p.m. Evansdale police began canvassing the area, and hundreds of volunteers from the community helped search for the missing cousins. Black Hawk sheriffs and the local fire department also joined in to search for the missing girls. At 4 p.m., the bikes belonging to Lirik and Elizabeth were found by local firefighters on a trail on the southeast corner of Myers Lake. Elizabeth's purse, which had a cell phone in it, was also found about 25 feet away, just on the other side of a fence, but Lirik and Elizabeth were nowhere to be found. The cell phone was used by the girls to play games and was not activated to make phone calls. When the bicycles were found, it became apparent that the girls were in imminent danger and that time was of the essence. Flyers were posted around the community, pleading for the children's safe return. The police officers ramped up their search and called in divers with Cedar Valley Underwater Search and Rescue to help search Myers Lake. Officers slowly paddled around the lake in kayaks. A group of 3 officers walking along the southeast shoreline found a cup. An officer with gloves and an evidence bag picked it up and took it back to a patrol car sitting along the bank. Officials didn't identify the object or even confirm whether it was related to the search. After several days of setback, the lake was partially drained, but they failed to find anything. Agents from FBI's Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team were also called in for the search. Meanwhile, volunteers, searchers, and sniffer dogs searched around the lake and trails. Police even followed the sanitation crews as they collected trash throughout the community. However, nothing came of it. The police conducted hundreds of interviews and retrieved footage from security cameras. The girls were seen on one security footage obtained from an auction house in an alley located a short distance away from their grandmother's house. Soon, a tip line turned up numerous reports of articles of clothing that had been found, but none belonged to the girls. Tips came from across the United States as it gained national attention. The police began to question registered sex offenders and anyone recently arrested for the sexual abuse or enticement of a minor in the area. Many of them were interviewed several times and were even asked to take a polygraph test. Unfortunately, all of them were cleared. The family and friends of the girls were also questioned and interviewed. The family members agreed to have their phones and personal computers taken for examination, but there was no sign of any suspicious activity and all of them were cleared. Within the next few months, police began investigating Lirik's parents, Dan and Misty, although they did say they were not suspects in the disappearance. Dan and Misty were divorced, but both parents had a history of drug abuse, and her father had a history of making drugs in the house while the children were home, including the day they disappeared. Dan specifically had numerous charges going back to the 1990s, which included crimes from burglary to possession and distribution of methamphetamines in large quantities. Not long before the girls vanished, Dan was also charged with physical assault on Misty, and at the time of the girls' disappearance, he had a restraining order against him, preventing him from contacting Misty. Dan was scheduled in court to testify against people he had meth deals with shortly after the girls' disappearance. At the time, Dan had pending cases against him, charging him with possessing, dealing, and making methamphetamine, and a range of other drug charges that could lock him up for decades if convicted. A year and a half after the girls went missing, Dan was sentenced to 90 years in prison for drug charges. Misty also had a checkered past and was convicted in 2014 for several crimes, which included excessive alcohol and drug-related offenses. She only served a short time in prison and would be released a year later. Despite their offenses, both parents maintained they had nothing to do with the girls' disappearances. Despite extensive investigation, no new update would be received for months. Then, on December 5, 2012, hunters came across two deceased bodies in the Seven Bridges Wildlife Park near Raelynne in Bremer County, a wildlife area about 25 miles from where the girls were last seen. They contacted law enforcement officials at 12:45 p.m. The next day, Chief Deputy Rick Abbin with the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce officials were confident that the bodies were those of Lirik and Elizabeth. Abbin said there were no other missing persons cases and the remains found were of a smaller stature. The bodies were transported to the State Medical Examiner's Office in Ankeny for a positive identification. On December 10, 2012, the Iowa State Medical Examiner's Office confirmed the bodies found were those of Lirik Cook and Elizabeth Collins. On February 6, 2013, officials announced that the trail and park at Myers Lake would be renamed to honor the memory of Lirik and Elizabeth. The trail that runs around the lake is now known as the Trail of Angels. The park next to the lake will also be known as Angels Park. The city also declared July 13th as Lirik and Elizabeth Day. According to the police, the area where the bodies were found was very isolated and not many people knew about it, suggesting that the perpetrator was familiar with the park. Authorities would never reveal the cause of death of the girls and other crucial information relating to the murder. This is usually done to help avoid false confessions, which actually did happen in this case. In 2012, the police would receive 2 separate confessions claiming to be the killer. The authorities, however, were able to quickly rule them out as they were not able to share any information that wasn't already revealed to the public. On June 24, 2013, 6 months after their bodies were found, authorities announced that they had 3 different witnesses who told police they saw a white, full-sized, older model SUV, similar to a Chevy Suburban or Ford Bronco, parked on Arbutus Avenue on July 13th, the day the girls vanished. Arbutus Avenue meets the bike trail where the girls' bicycles were located. The vehicle was described as a large and clunky white SUV and an old-style boxy Suburban. 2 of the witnesses had reported seeing this white SUV parked between the bike trail signs. The other witness told police that they saw the vehicle parked near the woods on the east side of the lake, which was only a few hundred feet away from where the bikes were found. All 3 witnesses say they'd seen the SUV sometime between 11:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. There was some criticism as to why police didn't reveal the vehicle information sooner. It was found that while 2 witnesses came forward during the initial canvassing of the area, the 3rd witness would come forward almost a year later because they assumed someone had already told police and that police just didn't know if the information was of any significance at the time. After the 3rd witness came forward, the police forwarded this tip to the media and asked for anyone with information to come forward. Around the same time, on May 20th, 2013, Kathleen Shepard and Desi Hughes were walking home from their school when they were lured into a pickup truck by a man. The man drove the girls around in his truck for some time before he took them to a hog confinement site where he zip-tied their hands together. The man then took Kathleen to another part of the property. When he left, Desi was able to escape and went for help. When the police arrived at the scene, they located his truck and found him dead inside. He had taken his own life. There were, however, no signs of Kathleen. Hundreds of police officers and volunteers scoured the network of rural roads and trails in the search for the 15-year-old, deploying aircrafts and sniffer dogs. Kathleen's body would be found a few weeks later on June 7, 2013, in the Des Moines River about 20 miles downriver from the pig farm. She had been stabbed and beaten to death. The police quickly identified the kidnapper as Michael Klunder, a registered sex offender from Stratford, Iowa. Klunder had spent years in and out of prison, including time served for a 1991 conviction on charges that he kidnapped and assaulted a woman and kidnapped 2 3-year-olds. Luckily, all of the victims had survived. The abduction came less than a year after the disappearance of Lirik and Elizabeth Cook, and less than 100 miles from Evansdale. Moreover, Klunder had recently been released from prison in 2011. All of this led police to wonder if Klunder had anything to do with Lirik and Elizabeth's murders. However, on May 14, 2014, police pretty confidently said that Michael Klunder was no longer a person of interest in the Lirik and Elizabeth case. In July of 2017, a 58-year-old man named Jeff Altmaier was arrested when he tried to lure away 2 elementary school girls while they were returning from school. It was found that he had been enticing children all over Iowa, in Ottawa, Jasper, and Grundy counties. In fact, in 2016, Jeff had attempted to lure dozens of children into his car. He was also a suspect in at least 2 other cases of sexual assault on underage girls. He would later be sentenced to life in prison for these crimes. Police investigated him as a potential lead in the Evansdale murders, but so far there's no evidence linking him to the crimes. Jeff is still a person of interest in the Evansdale murders. In 2018, 36-year-old Teresa Gerleman crossed the train tracks with her 8-year-old son as the train approached, but then returned to the center of the tracks as the train drew near and pulled her son onto the tracks at the last moment, killing both of them instantly. Police at first thought it was a tragic accident, but after checking the CCTV footage and talking to Teresa's friends, police realized it was a murder-suicide. During their investigations, police found out that Teresa had told her community support specialists at Genesis Development, Julie Croft and Belle Plain, that she had kept a 6-page letter in a box in her house. The letter was written by the men who had supposedly killed Lirik Cook and Elizabeth Collins. Teresa said she used to hang around with these men and that they had admitted to the crime. Investigators executed a search warrant, taking several items from Teresa's home. Other items found while executing the search warrant included 4 cell phones, 2 notebooks, and 2 sealed envelopes that said, "To Jeremiah from Henry," and "To Phaedra from Henry." Teresa's son was named Henry. They also found a 6-page letter, but it did not contain any additional information that Julie hadn't already told them about. Teresa also told Julie that her medications made her feel like standing in front of a train about 3 months ago. During the investigation, authorities also found that she didn't have much for immediate family. Both her parents were deceased and she had no siblings. Police believe that Teresa's mental health probably made it hard for her to differentiate what was real and what was not. It is unknown if Teresa and her son's death were linked to the Evansdale murders. Over the last few years, some have speculated that Lirik and Elizabeth's murders might be related to the February 2017 murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German in Delphi, Indiana. There were some similarities in the two murders, but police have since ruled out any connection between the two murders. The Evansdale Police Department has said that the perpetrator is likely to be local, and the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, the BAU, has analyzed the case and believed that one person is responsible for the abduction and murders and released an outline of the offender's profile. The offender is believed to be familiar with both Myers Lake and Seven Bridges Wildlife Area in Bremer County. The offender selected Seven Bridges because he was familiar with how secluded the area is. The offender blends in with and maybe is part of the Evansdale, Bremer, and surrounding communities. The perpetrator most likely used quiet coercion to gain compliance, such as a ruse or threats of violence to get the girls to leave with him. During July of 2012, the perpetrator may have been experiencing stress due to spousal problems, financial difficulties, legal trouble, employment difficulties, or mental health issues. The offender may avoid discussing the case or may show interest in following media developments. The offender may not have abducted or attempted to abduct other children or adults in the past. Following the disappearance, the suspect may have changed their appearance, hairstyle, or facial hair. The offender's vehicle may have been hidden or suddenly sold, altered with a new paint job, or the interior reupholstered. Police have investigated more than 1,000 leads and interviewed over 300 sex offenders, but the case still remains unsolved. If you have any information about the murders of Lirik and Elizabeth, please contact the authorities.